You're listening to The Jacob Valk Show. He's breaking down the latest and greatest in sports as only he can. Follow him on Twitter @RealJacobValk. Here he is, Jacob Valk.
Hello, sports fans! Welcome to another edition of the Jacob Valk Show. I am the Jacob Valk, except no imitation. Obviously, I gotta start with the CFP National Title game. Really a tale of two halves. The first half put a lot of people to sleep. The second half was very exciting. It was all Georgia. It's kind of funny. Nick Saban said that Georgia kicked their ass in the fourth quarter. It wasn't just the fourth quarter. It was the second half. In the second half, the Bulldogs outscored the Crimson Tide 27-9. It's hard to win a football game that way. If you forget doubled up, tripled up in the second half. The halftime adjustments that Kirby Smart made were absolutely perfect. The concerted effort to bring pressure, to get Bryce Young uncomfortable. I've never seen Bryce Young look as uncomfortable as he did yesterday. Young threw 2 interceptions last night. That's the first time this year that he's ever done that. Georgia did an excellent job of capitalizing on Young's mistakes. They did a great job of staying with Alabama. All those drives where Alabama drove deep into Georgia territory, it's very easy to get disheartened and say, oh boy, here we go, we're going to give up a touchdown. This is just going to be the start of 1,000,000 touchdowns for the Tide. They're going to roll to victory. But no. Georgia's defense bent, but it did not break. Just an absolutely phenomenal job by Georgia's defense. I thought everyone played well. Nakobe Dean may have locked down a top 10 draft spot with that performance. I'll give you a little bit of a spoiler alert. My Jets offseason preview will come your way tomorrow night. I'm going to call for the Jets to draft Dean. I was that impressed with him. As I was with everyone on Georgia's defense. The Georgia secondary was outstanding. William Poole, Darian Kendrick, Kelly Ringo with the pick 6, Chris Smith with the interception to start the second half. Lewis Sine was really good. It was a dominant performance by the Bulldogs defense. You knew that Georgia's defense would need to step up in this game. You knew that they were embarrassed against Alabama in the SEC title game, giving up 41 points. To put that number into perspective, in the month of November, Georgia gave up only 30 points total. But Bryce Young could do no wrong against Georgia's defense. And that hurt Georgia. They were embarrassed. They could have been the 1 seed very easily. They could have had a perfect season. There was a real concern that Georgia would be nervous facing Alabama last night. They'd have December 4th in their minds. They'd be hesitant. They wouldn't be as dominant. I never thought that was the case. The 24-hour rule is real. If you don't know what that is, it's the theory that when something bad happens in the sports world, you can get upset at it for the 24 hours after it happened. Then at the 25th hour, you stop feeling sorry for yourself. You've got a game to prepare for. Nothing you can do to change the past. I mean, that works. Think about how Georgia destroyed Michigan. This really good Michigan team. The best Wolverines team that Jim Harbaugh has ever coached can only muster 11 points in the Orange Bowl. I mean, one thing that was clear, the 2 best teams in the nation were going at it for the national title. Now, in the old system, the BCS, that wasn't always the case. You don't need me to tell you all the teams that got screwed over by the BCS. Even this system, the CFP, has had some issues. Remember UCF a few years ago? It doesn't always shake out that the 2 best teams go at it for the national title. This year, we got the 2 best teams duking it out for the national title. I mean, say what you want about the first half. Maybe it wasn't the most exciting half of football you've ever seen, but personally, I like defensive struggles. That means it's close. Georgia didn't pull away until the 4th quarter. It was 9-6 at the half. Yes, no touchdowns. But you could tell that both of these teams were evenly matched. The thing that's going to really upset Alabama about this game is all the opportunities that they had when they were deep in Georgia territory to put a touchdown on the board, and they just couldn't convert. Think about the Jameson Williams catch. The play that he got hurt on. That was a 40-yard pass by Bryce Young. That got the ball to Georgia's 35-yard line. Georgia had just tied the game at 3. You could tell that their offense really wasn't great at that point in the game. They had one big play, the big pass to George Pickens. You could sense that after the Williams catch, there was an opportunity there for Alabama to really get a ton of momentum with a touchdown. Unfortunately for them, they didn't get a first down after that on that drive. They had a killer false start, Went from 3rd and 1 to 3rd and 6, and you have to settle for a field goal. And let me tell you, you cannot overstate the impact of the Williams injury. With John Mechie already out, you knew that Williams would shoulder a lot of the load. With him out, you're relying on, for lack of a better term, inferior talent. I mean, all due respect to Cameron Latu, Ja'Cory Brooks, and Slade Bolden, but those three guys combined aren't as good as Jameson Williams. When Williams left the game, he had 4 catches for 65 yards. He was on his way to a monster game. Him being out really changed what Alabama was able to do offensively. It meant that Alabama would try to get the run game going a little bit, which I thought was the right decision, but Georgia was just too blasted good. Brian Robinson could get nothing going. So think about this situation if you're Alabama. You have a running game that can't get going. You've got a quarterback that's doing a terrible job under pressure. Looks like young Eli Manning. He's without his 2 best receivers. What on earth are they going to do? There really wasn't much they could do. I mean, perfect example. Latu has the big catch and run to make it 1st and goal at the Georgia 8-yard line. It's 6-3 Bama at this point. A touchdown, and it doesn't put the game out of reach by any stretch, but you're feeling really good about Bama's chances because Georgia's offense was inept. What happens next? 2-yard run, incomplete pass, and a killer sack. Alabama has to settle for another field goal. So it's 9-3 Bama. Then they give up a big 9-play drive. It makes it 9-6 Bama. This was actually the first national title game to feature 5 combined field goals in a half. And since 1998, the inception of the BCS, there had only been 2 national title games where neither team scored a touchdown in the first half. Oklahoma FSU in 2000, Alabama LSU in 2011. In the second half, Bama just looked dead to the world. I mean, I don't think I've ever seen the Crimson Tide under Saban look as bad in a half as they did in the second half of that game yesterday. You've got Young just airmailing everyone. He winds up throwing the interception to Smith. You've got drops galore. Like I said, that's the impact of Jameson Williams' absence right there. You have a blocked field goal. When's the last time you saw Alabama get blocked on a field goal? Georgia's a very good field goal blocking team. There's no question about that. But this is Alabama we're talking about. They're supposed to be better than that. You had just went on a big 17-play drive. It took up over half the quarter. It doesn't result in any points. What happens after that? James Cook has the biggest Georgia play of the game. A 67-yard run. Really bad job of tackling, really bad job of not filling up the gaps. 3 plays later, touchdown Georgia. They took their first lead of the game. The first touchdown of the game was scored with 80 seconds left in the third quarter. That seemed to wake Bama up a bit. Like, my father has a saying. Whenever someone scores against Bama, all you're doing is making Nick Saban angry. Yeah, Saban wasn't too happy. Because the Tide did drive down the field after that. They had to settle for another field goal. You're not feeling great at that point. It was 1st and goal at the 5. You've got to be able to punch it in. But I think you'd settle for a field goal. You had the sense at that point that a low-scoring game was upon us, and you could play for field goals. So yes, Bama should have scored a touchdown there, but it wasn't the end of the world, especially when you factor in the crazy fumble by Stetson Bennett. Very controversial call. Live time, I thought it was an incomplete pass. Even when it was slowed down, my father thought it was an incomplete pass. I thought the ball was starting to come out just before his arm was going forward. So I did think it was a fumble. But then the question becomes, was Brian Branch in bounds when he recovered the ball? Did his right foot stay in bounds? By a blade of grass. And I mean one blade of grass. It did. ESPN found the only camera angle on Earth that showed definitively that there was actually green between Branch's toes and the sideline. There is no way that he did that on purpose. He thought it was an incomplete pass. But hey, it gave Alabama possession of the football at Georgia's 16-yard line. Alabama was able to punch it in after that. Then Georgia came alive. On 2nd and 18, Bennett threw an absolutely perfect football. He found Adonai Mitchell in single coverage. Sometimes when you're a quarterback, you want to lob it up to your guy in single coverage and say, you know what, big fella? Go up there and make a play. And Mitchell made a play over Kyrie Jackson. I understand that was a free play. Bama was offsides. I'll be honest with you. I don't think Bennett knew that Alabama was offsides there. This wasn't like Dee Ford in the AFC title game a couple of years ago. This was really close. I mean, you watch the replay, Bennett never makes eye contact with the flag. I don't think he knew that Alabama was offsides. I really don't. If he did, great job by him. But the fact that he didn't just makes that throw that much more impressive. That just started the big Georgia run to close this game out. Alabama goes 3 and out. Georgia drives down the field a little bit. It's 25-18 Georgia at this point. So, here's the question. Do you go for 2? Do you make it a 2-score game? Or do you kick the extra point and trust your defense to stop Bama on a 2-point conversion? Kirby Smart decided to kick a field goal. Personally, I thought it was the wrong decision. I would have gone for 2. Even if you miss, worse comes to worse, Saban's left with a similar decision. It's 25-18. So do you then kick the extra point to tie the game? Or do you go for 2 against a great Georgia defense? See, it cuts both ways. Smart decided to kick the PAT. Like I said, I thought it was the wrong decision, but ultimately, it didn't matter much because Kelly Ringo had probably the best play in Georgia history, the 79-yard pick six. That iced the game right then and there. Georgia won 33-18, their first national title since 1980. I'll tell you something interesting that I found out about that 1980 team. That team was obviously coached by Vince Dooley. You know where Vince Dooley was born? Mobile, Alabama. So the first guy you think of when you think of Georgia football was born in Mobile, Alabama. Granted, Mobile is nowhere near Tuscaloosa, but still, it's kind of interesting that Dooley was born in Alabama. Congratulations to Georgia. They really were the best team this year. You've got to be so happy for Stetson Bennett. What a crazy journey. Here's a guy who was born and raised in Georgia, grew up wanting to be the Bulldogs quarterback, finally gets that chance in 2017, but he's a walk-on. Georgia doesn't think anything of him. He doesn't play a snap that year. When Justin Fields committed to Georgia, Bennett transferred to Jones County Junior College in Ellisville, Mississippi. Then when Fields transferred to OSU, Georgia said, we'll give you a scholarship to be Jake Fromm's backup. Bennett said yes, but really didn't get a ton of playing time. Then in 2020, the planned starter was Jamie Newman. He opted out. DeJuan Mathis became the starter. He does nothing. Bennett takes over. Really doesn't set the world on fire. JT Daniels comes in and leads Georgia to a Peach Bowl victory over Cincinnati. So going into this season, everyone's thinking this is the JT Daniels show. Bennett's an afterthought. In fact, entering the season, JT Daniels was selected to the preseason All-SEC second team. Then Daniels got hurt. Bennett came in and seized the starting job. And now he's a national champion. Now he led his team, the team that he grew up rooting for, to a national title for the first time in over 40 years. The entire state of Georgia eats, sleeps, and breathes Bulldogs football. They care more about the Bulldogs than they do the Falcons. The only Georgians that don't like Bulldogs football root for Georgia Tech. That state comes to a halt when Georgia plays football. Remember the controversy surrounding Georgia's votes in this past presidential election? One of the officials said, "We're going to take a little break because there's a Georgia game on." Georgia stopped counting their votes in the presidential election when they were a swing state so they could watch the Bulldogs play football. Think about how crazy that is. This is an incredibly passionate fan base with a great history. You gotta love Uga the Bulldog, even if you don't like dogs. You've gotta love Uga. There's probably no other fan base that deserves a national title as much as Georgia Bulldogs fans. It's kind of funny. The Hawks made the Eastern Conference Finals last year. The Braves won the World Series. Now Georgia's national champs. Great time to live in Georgia, right? And now the SEC has won back-to-back-to-back national titles. There is no question about it. The SEC is the best conference in college football. Nothing comes close. Not the Big Ten, not the Big 12, not the AAC, not the Pac-12, not the ACC, nothing. You can sort of kind of understand why Lincoln Riley wanted to leave, right? No, it was still a classless decision by him. But again, congrats to Georgia. They really deserved it. They were the best team all throughout this year. I was certainly rooting for them. I'm tired of seeing Bama win every year. I'm tired of seeing Bama in the national title game every year. The CFP has been around since 2014. There have only been 2 years since the advent of the CFP where Alabama has not been in the national title game. In 2015, OSU beat Oregon in the national title game, but Bama was in the mix. And in 2020, LSU beat Clemson in the national title game. Alabama was not in the CFP that year. They destroyed Michigan in the Citrus Bowl 35-16. I mean, I understand that any year that Alabama doesn't win, it's a failure, but you have nothing to be upset about if you're a Crimson Tide fan. You made it to the national title game. You gave Georgia a run for their money. And technically speaking, you did beat them this year. Granted, not when it mattered most, but still, you did beat them in the SEC title game. That does mean something. With Bryce Young still at Bama, you'll be back next year. No question about that. Alright, now I'll give you some NFL Valk talk. With the regular season coming to a close, it's time for me to make my NFL award picks. Look forward to this every year. And I'll start with MVP. To me, this is really a two-person race between Tom Brady and Cooper Kupp. It would be Jonathan Taylor, but since the Colts lost to the Jaguars their last game of the season, he's out of it, okay? I don't like it when players are named MVP when they played for a team that didn't make the playoffs. I hate it in baseball, hate it in hockey, hate it in football, hate it in basketball. So it's a two-person race between Tom Brady and Cooper Kupp. Not Aaron Rodgers. Brady threw for more passing yards this year. Brady threw for more touchdowns this year. This has nothing to do with Rodgers being unvaccinated. From a football perspective, I don't think Aaron Rodgers deserves to be in the MVP conversation. I think it's a two-person race. That's it. Now, you remember when I said in a previous episode that MVP fatigue is real? Some people are just sick and tired of voting for Brady every single year. The guy's won it 3 times, alright? Give someone else a chance. That is factoring into my decision a little bit. It has nothing to do with the fact that it's Tom Brady, okay? Tom Brady's a Buccaneer. I don't care if he wins the Super Bowl again. I don't care if the Buccaneers lose to the Eagles. Okay? It doesn't matter. I just want someone else to win MVP. And when you have a guy in Cooper Kupp who put together one of the greatest seasons for a wide receiver in NFL history, you've got to take notice. This guy led the NFL in catches, receiving yards, receiving touchdowns, and receiving yards per game. He played in every game this year. He fell 4 catches shy of Michael Thomas's single-season record for most catches in a season. And he fell 17 yards shy of Calvin Johnson's single-season record for most receiving yards in a season. A wide receiver has never won MVP before. The thinking has always been, well, it's the quarterback that makes the wide receiver better. No. Watch the Rams. Kupp was doing a lot to help Matthew Stafford. My vote would have to go to Cooper Kupp. I really think he's the MVP. I mean, I understand the argument of think about where the Buccaneers would be without Brady. No question. They'd struggle. That plays against Rodgers because Jordan Love wouldn't be terrible. Wouldn't be great, but wouldn't be terrible. The Packers would hold their own. The Buccaneers wouldn't. But think about where the Rams would be without Kupp. You want Van Jefferson and Odell Beckham being your top 2 receivers? That's not going to work. Cooper Kupp is incredibly important to the Rams' success this year. No question about it. He's the MVP. That brings us to Offensive Player of the Year, and this is where I'll cast my vote for Jonathan Taylor. Led the NFL in rushing yards by a mile. Led the NFL in rushing touchdowns. I mean, there's no question about it. If the Colts had made the playoffs, it would have been really tough for me to not cast my vote for Taylor. In fact, Taylor and Kupp may have canceled each other out a bit. How do you decide between a running back and a wide receiver? What, would I just cast my vote for Kupp because a wide receiver has never won MVP before? I don't know if I would do that. Maybe I'd have to vote for Brady, but because the Colts fell out of the playoffs, Taylor's out of the mix. But he is Offensive Player of the Year. The sky's the limit for this kid. It's kind of funny, some Jets fans are already counting down the days until he becomes a free agent because he was born and raised in Salem, New Jersey. I don't know if he grew up rooting for the Jets. I mean, Salem is closer to Philly than it is East Rutherford. But I don't want to get too ahead of myself. Jonathan Taylor deserves to be honored in some way, shape, or form. He's got to be the Offensive Player of the Year. Moving on now to Defensive Player of the Year. And there's really no competition here. The answer is TJ Watt. The guy tied Michael Strahan's record for most sacks in a single season with 22 and a half. He almost broke the record, but that controversial call went against him. As great as J.J. Watt once was, he never had 22 and a half sacks in a season. He never led the NFL in sacks in back-to-back seasons. He never had a 4-year stretch where he had at least 13 sacks every year. You can make a very strong argument that TJ Watt is better than JJ Watt ever was. JJ Watt won 3 Defensive Player of the Year awards in 12, 14, and 15. TJ Watt should cut the deficit this year. Moving on now to Offensive Rookie of the Year. And this is tough. There are a lot of really talented players that deserve to be in the mix. Jamar Chase, Kyle Pitts, Jalen Waddle, Najee Harris, Elijah Mitchell, Javonte Williams, and Mac Jones. Ultimately, I have to cast my vote for Jamar Chase. Statistically speaking, Chase was the best rookie wide receiver this year. Led all rookies in receiving yards. Led all rookies in yards per catch. Led all rookies in receiving yards per game. Led all rookies in receiving touchdowns. Najee Harris had a really good season, but he averaged under 4 yards a carry. I've got to ding him for that a little bit. And I'm not going to cast my vote for Mitchell or Williams. They didn't have 1,000 rushing yards this year. Mac Jones had a good season, but the eye test doesn't lie. He was a game manager. I can't give a game manager Offensive Rookie of the Year. Chase would get my vote. The Bengals made the right decision by taking him over Penei Sewell. The LSU connection with him and Burrow is real. I understand that Sewell had a great year for the Lions, but Chase was really, really special this year. Without him, I don't know if the Bengals get into the playoffs. Moving on now to Defensive Rookie of the Year. You have no idea how hard it was for me to find a leaderboard for defensive rookies. Because I pay for Pro Football Focus, I was able to figure it out, but there should be an easier way to do it. You want to tell me that I shouldn't have needed to look at stats because the answer is obviously Micah Parsons? Fair point, but I did want to dot all the I's and cross all the T's. Look, Parsons had an incredibly dominant season. He led all rookies in sacks with 10. Was second among all rookies in tackles with 61. For whatever it's worth, Nick Bolton led all rookies in tackles with 83. But Parsons did force some fumbles. Had the best Pro Football Focus grade among all defensive rookies this year with 88.5. That does mean something. The correct answer is by far and away Micah Parsons. He's the easy choice for Defensive Rookie of the Year. Moving on now to Coach of the Year. This was a little tougher than I thought it would be. But ultimately, I stuck with my guy, Zach Taylor. I had said for a while that he'd be my pick for Coach of the Year. The thing is, though, seeing the Eagles make the playoffs, when I thought they'd be at the bottom of the NFC East, that really gave me pause. I know there's no award for this, but if there was, the AFC Coach of the Year would be Zach Taylor. There's no question about that. The NFC Coach of the Year would be Nick Sirianni. Ultimately, the reason why I went with Taylor over Sirianni is because the Bengals won a really tough AFC North. And the Eagles were a wildcard team. In fact, they were the last wildcard team. I've got to ding them a little bit for that. While I wouldn't be too upset if Sirianni got Coach of the Year, I think the correct answer is Zach Taylor. I'll close this out with Executive of the Year. And to me, there's only one correct answer. Jason Light. He's the GM of the Buccaneers. What he was able to do in terms of keeping everyone around from their Super Bowl run, the first time that's ever happened in the free agency era, where everyone comes back, is something that only happens in Madden when you turn the salary cap off. I mean, look at the team that Light put together. They went 13-4. They're a legitimate Super Bowl threat. There's no question about that. I don't care who else you want to throw out there. no one comes close to Jason Light. I'll close this show out by eulogizing the late, great Don Maynard. He died yesterday at the age of 86 from dementia. This one hurts. This one really hurts. This one really upset me. I called a lot of people after I found out that Maynard died. I found out Maynard died after I posted yesterday's show. I felt really bad that I didn't talk about Maynard yesterday. You can still do it today. It's not old news. But wow, this one hurt. This year is starting out terribly for deaths. I mean, my God. Dan Reeves, Ross Browner, Ralph Neely, Sidney Poitier, Bob Saget, and now Don Maynard? Ugh. Don Maynard is, without question, the second best Jet to ever live. Number one is Namath. Alright, there's no question about that. Maynard is 2. Okay, those are the 2 correct answers. 3 to 4 are debatable if you're doing the Mount Rushmore. But 1 and 2 are not in debate. It's Namath and Maynard. The Jets have done a bad job in retiring numbers. There are only 5 Jets that have had their numbers retired. Don Maynard is one of those 5. It's Namath with 12, Maynard with 13, Curtis Martin with 28, Joe Klecko with 73, Dennis Byrd with 90. I think we can all agree that those guys deserve to have their numbers retired, but there are other guys that you've got to put in there also. So the fact that Maynard is one of those few speaks volumes to his dominance. Make no mistake about it. Don Maynard was one of the best receivers of the 1960s. Period. Case closed. The funny thing is, it almost didn't happen. Maynard was drafted by the Giants in 1957. Barely played for the Giants. Went to the Hamilton Tiger Cats of the CFL. Barely played there. It seemed like Don Maynard would just be a footnote in football history. Then the New York Titans came into existence. As one of the charter members of the AFL, the Titans owner, Harry Wismer, made a notable splash in bringing in Sammy Baugh, an NFL legend, to be his first head coach. Before Baugh was with the Titans, he was the head coach of the Hardin-Simmons Cowboys. Hardin-Simmons University is in Abilene, Texas. Guess who Baugh coached against when Hardin-Simmons went up against Texas Western, later known as UTEP? Don Maynard. The first thing that Sammy Baugh did as head coach of the New York Titans was implore Steve Sebo, the GM, and Harry Wismer, the owner, to sign Don Maynard. I mean, no one thought this guy would do anything. This guy's one of your starting wide receivers, to use a modern term? You're kidding, right? Him and Art Powell, another NFL reject. Powell formerly played for the Philadelphia Eagles, became the first wide receiver duo in professional football history to both have over 1,000 receiving yards. Powell had 69 catches for 1,167 yards and 14 touchdowns. Maynard had 72 catches for 1,265 yards and 6 touchdowns. They repeated that feat in 1962, Bulldog Turner's first year as Titans head coach, and the last year that the Titans would be known as the Titans. Powell had 64 catches for 1,130 yards and 8 touchdowns. Maynard had 56 catches for 1,041 yards and 8 touchdowns. Now, Maynard did not have good quarterbacks to work with. All due respect to guys like Al Doro, Johnny Green, and Dick Wood. Yes, that actually is the man's name, Dick Wood. I can hear every 12-year-old boy in America snicker. Those guys just weren't good quarterbacks. If the Jets and Maynard were ever going to do anything, they needed a superstar quarterback. They found one out of the University of Alabama, Joseph William Namath. Namath and Maynard became one of the greatest quarterback to wide receiver combinations in, I would argue, professional football history. Are they at the top of the list? No, but are they top 20, maybe top 10? You can make that argument. In Namath's first year with the Jets, Maynard made his first Pro Bowl. He had 68 catches for 1,218 yards, and he led the AFL in touchdowns with 14. In 1967, Namath became the first quarterback in professional football history to throw for 4,000 yards in a season. He had 4,007. Maynard helped more than anyone. He had 71 catches for 1,434 yards and 10 touchdowns. He led the AFL in receiving yards and receiving yards per game. He made his second Pro Bowl. The year after that, 1968, Maynard had another great year. 57 catches for 1,297 yards and 10 touchdowns. He led the AFL in yards per catch and yards per game. If you don't know the story, let me tell it to you. The Jets dominated the AFL East. They went 11-3. No other team in their division finished over 500. In the AFL West, the Raiders and Chiefs played a tiebreaker game to decide who would go up against the Jets for the right to represent the AFL in the Super Bowl. The Raiders destroyed the Chiefs 41-6. So it was Jets-Raiders in the AFL title game. Don Maynard had a great game. He had 6 catches for 118 yards and 2 touchdowns. In the fourth quarter, he caught the eventual game-winning touchdown. The Jets won 27-23. Unbeknownst to anyone, Maynard had gotten hurt in the AFL title game. So in Super Bowl III, Weeb Ewbank had a tough decision to make. He handled it absolutely perfectly. He put Maynard out there, but only as a decoy. The Colts had to respect him because he's Don Maynard, one of the best wide receivers in football. And that opened up the door for a guy like George Sauer to have 8 catches for 133 yards. It's one of the greatest diversions in sports history. It's sad that Maynard didn't record a catch in Super Bowl III, the greatest moment in Jets history, but at least he played. That does mean something. The year after that, Maynard had 47 catches for 938 yards and 6 touchdowns. He made his last Pro Bowl, and when I say Pro Bowl, I mean AFL All-Star Game. I'm just trying to use modern parlance. The Jets went 10-4. They dominated the AFL East. Once again, no other team finished over 500. In the divisional round, the Jets went up against the Chiefs. The Chiefs won 13-6. The low light of that game being the 19-yard touchdown pass by Len Dawson to Gloucester Richardson. Maynard had 1 catch for 18 yards in that game. The Chiefs' defense was absolutely outstanding in that game. Jim Marsalis, Emmett Thomas, Bobby Bell, Buck Buchanan. Guys like that were insane. That was really the last great season of Maynard's career. His age had caught up to him once the Jets moved to the NFL. He wasn't the player that he once was. He finished his career with the 73 St. Louis Cardinals. He did play in the WFL, though. He was a Houston Texan, and he even followed them to Shreveport when they became the Steamer. Maynard is one of only 20 people to have played in the AFL for its entire 10-year run. He is one of only 7 players who played their entire AFL career for one team. To this day, he has the highest yards per catch in professional football history out of all the players to catch at least 600 passes. His mark is 18.7, for whatever it's worth. He was the first player to ever have 10,000 career receiving yards. He was Pro Football's all-time leading receiver until Charlie Joyner surpassed him in 1986. He made 2 All-AFL second teams in 65 and 67. made 2 All-AFL first teams in 68 and 69, was named as one of the 2 wide receivers on the AFL's all-time first team. Lance Allworth was the other one. On the second team was Maynard's teammate Art Powell and the former Houston Oiler Charlie Hennigan. There is no debate that Don Maynard is one of the greatest receivers in NFL history. From the bottom of my heart, I sincerely hope that he rests in peace. New York Jets offseason preview comes your way tomorrow night. I'm making that official right now. I'll say this, one thing that the Jets need to do in the offseason is figure out how they're going to honor Don Maynard. Whatever they decide to do, it won't be enough. Whether it's a statue, a helmet decal, a patch, whatever. You can't do enough to honor that man. Regular episodes of The Jacob Valk Show come your way every weekday afternoon. Until next time, I'm Jacob Valk, and always remember, if you disagree with me, you're wrong.